transitioning to is you're going to be running these hypothesis tests and confidence intervals for not multiple, but now you're going to be adding on a different variable now, okay? So you're going to be dealing with this with two averages, two sample sizes, two standard deviations. So when you run these tests, you're just going to be adding on, basically, you're going to be doubling the information that you have in the steps. So just like pretty much everything we do from here on out, I'm going to give you that recipe for success because it outlines all the steps for you to kind of guide you in the right direction. So again, the last steps that we do, they're going to be similar to what we've done already, but we're going to be adding on now comparing two different things. So what we're looking at for this question is we're trying to see if there's a difference in like the amount of information that can memorize between two different types of programs. Okay, like a sexual content program versus a violent content program. So we're trying to see, is there a difference in the amount of memory or information someone memorizes between those two types of commercials. So you got to look out for keywords because the keywords are going to indicate what inequality to use. So the key word in this question is you're trying to examine if there's a difference between the two. Okay, so you're not figuring out if one type of program, is more than the other or less than the other. You just want to know if they're different. So when you set up your step, the first step, you're going to be using that inequality, okay, or that does not equal sign for this question. Okay, sometimes there may be another question where it wants something greater than the other, but in this case, you're comparing the two, but you just want to know if they're different from each other. So when you write out the first step, okay, we're going to say, I guess we can label these. So this would be M1 and M2. Okay, and I did the sexual content one first as M1 because that's what they mentioned first in the question. And then they mentioned the violent content one second, so I just label that one as M2. So your null hypothesis is that they are like equal to each other. Basically, the amount of information someone can memorize between the two types of programs are the same. Your alternative that you're testing is that they're different. You want to see if there's a difference between the two. So M1 does not equal to M2. Okay. So you're finished with step one. So step two, you're defining the parameter. So now you have to do that for two different times. Now you have to add on a second parameter that you're defining. So keep in mind, we're not using this last column. Okay, this question does not care about the neutral type of programs that people are watching. So you can just ignore this last column. So you have to define this basically twice: one for the sexual content one, and then again for the violent content commercials. So first one, I guess we can do M1. So it's going to be the true population mean. So the true population mean for add memory is pretty much what we're trying to figure out. In this case, we labeled M1 as the sexual content. So for sexual content. Okay, so that would be M1. So your second parameter that you're defining is going to pretty much say all the same thing. So just to kind of save us some time, that way I can fit everything in the video. So it's going to say the true population mean for add memory, except you're going to change up what it is because M2 now revolves around violent content. So this one will say for violent content. Okay. So that way, but you'd want to write it out like when you're doing it. Write it out. I just want to make sure I get through this example in that 15 minutes that I have. For which one? Oh, that means those quotations mean that you're just rewriting all the way through there. So you'd write out the true population mean for add memory for violent content. So step 3, you write out the equation. Now it's a different equation because you're comparing two different categories now versus just one. So the equation looks it looks kind of messy. Okay, just kind of warning you. But the good thing is you're not going to have to calculate anything using it. You just have to, well, in this case, this step, you just have to write everything out. So it'd be x1 minus x2. So you're subtracting the two averages, sample averages. And then at the bottom, you're going to be square rooting s1 squared over n1 plus s2 squared over n2. Okay. So that's the equation that you're applying now for these types of questions. So just so you know where those variables come from, like x1, x2, s1, s2, n1, n2, they're actually given to you in this question. So the first row is your sample size. So this would be, what would that be? Out of those three letters, actually there's 6. So this would be N1. This is the mean number of brands recalled, so this would be X1 or X bar 1, and this would be S1. Okay, so now for violent, this would be N2, X2, S2. Okay, so this is pretty nice because all that information is given to you. So you need to understand that. Okay, so when you move on to list or question 4 or step 4, okay, it's asking if there's data or not. Okay, that's not data. Okay, that's just providing you the information that you need for the equation. So step 4, you'd say there's no data. Okay. There's no list that they're providing for you. Step 5 is where you're defining the variables. Okay, so step 5 is you're listing all those things out. So x bar 1, s1, n1, and then x bar 2, s2, n2. Okay, you're defining what those are. So you got those. Okay, so I labeled those already at the top, so you just kind of rewriting what they were. So this is 1.71. This was 2.08. Both of the sample sizes are the same for both. So both of these are going to be 108. This is going to be 108. And then the standard deviations are a little bit different. So for the sexual content standard deviation, that was 1.76. And then for the violent content, that one was 1.87. So you're defining those. Okay. But y'all realize one thing, okay? This is a nice example that we're doing because they're giving you these 6 things, okay? Like if we fast forwarded to maybe some of the other questions that y'all are going to be working on, for example, like 3. Okay, now, like this is giving you data, actual data that you're going to have to input. So you're going to have to put like these numbers into list 1 and then do a 1 variable stats test. And you're going to have to find out, like, you're going to have to figure out, x1, s1, n1, okay? And then you're going to have to go to your other list, to this side, and put these numbers into list 2, and then find the sample average, the standard deviation, and then the sample size for these sets of numbers. So if you're given data, they're giving that to you because they're not going to give you these numbers. Okay, you're having to figure that out yourself. But you already know how to do that. You're just putting the numbers into the list and doing the 1 variable stats test and getting those numbers. So just realize that. Okay, it's like some other questions may require a little bit more work because you're having to input the data that they're giving you. So this one, we didn't have to. They gave us all 6 of them. So step 6, degrees of freedom. We have to list that for what? Don't worry about that. Yeah, I guess you can cross that out on your, like on that steps DF. Okay, so for 6, you're plugging in all 6 of these variables back into the equation. So it will look like this. But keep in mind, like you're not calculating, you're just plugging them in. Okay, there's a test that you run that gives you this number. So this would be 1.76 squared divided by 108 plus, what's the next part? S2 squared. So 1.87 squared divided by 108. Okay. Now keep in mind, you could actually compute this and get your t-value, but you'd really have to know where to include parentheses, and you'd probably have to do this in pieces, like do the numerator first and then worry about the denominator. But there's no reason to do this when there's a test you can run that provides you with that number. So on step 7, that's where you're listing out your t-value from that. But off to the side, it tells you what test to run. So you're going to go to stat, test. I mean, pretty much the same place you go for this class for every single thing we do. Okay, but now you're choosing, because you're dealing with 2 samples, not just one, you're going to do a 2-sample t-test. Okay, so you're going to choose option number 4. So you hit enter, and then highlight stats, because it should be on data, unless someone in second period already done this. So highlight stats, and you're going to input those 6 numbers right there where they go. Okay. So they may be in, depending on who had your calculator during second period. Maybe then it won't, but you put all the 6 numbers in, and then you highlight whatever sign you're using for your alternative test. You want to highlight that. If not, you're going to get the wrong t-value. So scroll all the way down. I don't know what it means by pulled, but I'm not going to mess with it. And then you hit calculate, and then it's going to give you the t-value and also the p-value for the following step, for step 8. Okay, so for step 7, t is equal to negative 1.497. Okay, and then what'd you get for p? It was 0.1358. Okay, so the question doesn't give you a significance level, right? So you use 0.05. So you're going to compare this to 0.05. So when you do that, this is larger than your alpha level, 0.05. So that allows you to reach the appropriate conclusion that you need, which is the same that you've been doing. So when p is greater than your alpha level, you fail to reject, right? So you're going to follow the fail to reject template. Okay, which is gonna be worded a little differently than what you've been doing, because you've only been writing your conclusion out for one topic, like for one variable. Now you're comparing 2 different categories. So I'm gonna say it. Okay, because I'm gonna run out of time and I want to make just one video. So following that template down there, you'd say our p-value is 0.1358. Okay, we failed to reject the null. There is not sufficient evidence at alpha equals 0.05 to suggest that the difference, okay, because that's what we're doing, right? To suggest that the difference, and then there's an additional blank, because you have to state, or you have to restate both parameters, M1 and M2. So there's not sufficient evidence at alpha 0.05 to suggest that the difference in true population mean for add memory of sexual content is different than the true population mean for add memory of violent content. Okay, you'll kind of get how that was worded, and I'll write it out here in a little bit. Yeah, let me